So it is 6:30, I'm calling the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August 15th. Is there a motion to do that?
I move.
Second?
I second.
I have one small correction, Tori, which, on page 3, you talk about a mud, and there's a silent U and S in the word mud, so it's MUUSD. So,
Okay.
Modified Unified Union School District is the spelled out acronym, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Well,
additions, thoughts?
I misspoke last week when I reported on the SBAC. Everyone was panicked to get the information to you, but while there was improvement in math, we did go down 5% in the English language arts area, although still well above the state. Yeah, I was comparing the scores to, I don't know what I was comparing the scores to.
So I guess that's what was said at the meeting, and the meeting should be a record of what occurred.
Okay.
So,
Great, I'll say stuff like that.
but maybe we'll clarify it during your report tonight.
Okay.
And, I don't know, can we put a notation into the notes saying, I don't know.
No, it would go in today's notes.
We'll go into
Yeah.
these notes
Just
for
note
sure,
that,
but,
It's the better way.
okay. No, it definitely should go in tonight's notes. I was just wondering if you put a comment there that please see the notes of something. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes with the changes noted, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Communications.
I'm gonna abstain, I'm sorry, just because I wasn't here.
Okay. That's 4 ayes and Michael abstained. Did anybody else have any communications?
Use a Dummerston article is due for the fall issue.
I have asked them to.
The 26th, I think,
Of
of this month.
okay.
Yeah, I can tell you.
Is that the deadline?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it
No.
would go out.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it goes out after the 11/7 vote. It goes, their date is supposed to be the, here it is, let's see. Yes, September 26th. And it's supposed to be issued 11/9, which is 2 days
2 days after the vote. Yep. So, any volunteers to write that article? So we will meet before it's due. I think we're due to meet the 24th, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what topic you guys want to discuss.
So that's what I was gonna talk about next. Like, any thoughts about what should be in the article?
Browsing, Dummerston Town School Board adopts ethics policy following.
Are we gonna do that?
Article, I don't know, you know,
Let's not put the
maybe
cart before the horse.
Well,
throwing a topic out there.
I think the pre-K piece would be a good thing
That
to
would be
sort of let
interesting.
people know is going on. That's a community of interest to the community at large. It's a little bit odd to talk about the merger since the vote will have been 2 days before, theoretically.
I guess you could talk about, a lot of times when we did articles before, we just would provide an update on what we were looking into it. Since we had last
Right.
reported, so, I mean, you could talk about some of the personnel changes on the board that, you know,
Oh,
we've
yeah.
got
That's a good
Sue
idea.
here now.
All right.
And then
That's a great idea.
We've got the pre-K.
And I do one anyway.
You do one anyway, so it's sort of more
New-
school. So
new
those are the
teachers.
big,
Retiring.
yeah.
So it looks like the 24th is a Sunday,
Oh, what is it?
so it's the 26th.
Oh, so it is the 26th we meet.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I'll make a go and send out a copy to everybody, and then if we're gonna meet on the 26th, I can
Yep.
send it to Roger after the meeting, if that works for everybody.
Yeah, that's what we've done.
Okay.
Maybe we could include like just a general type of question in the article about just maybe like the pre-K side of things, about what kind of interest would there be, you know, would you let the board know, or something
Okay.
along those lines, you know what I mean?
Excellent. I'll
Because
put
we've been
your,
talking in our pre-K discussions about how we're kind of somewhat, I mean, we have information for sure, but we don't have maybe
Yep.
all of it, maybe.
and by then we, oh no, not by the time, when is the open house?
The K-4 open house is Monday, the 18th.
Oh, so we will have had an opportunity to engage some community members about it, so we can maybe talk about the interest from a parent standpoint anyway, by then. So Michael, I might give you the point of contact for all that, since it was your idea.
Sure.
So if you have any other topics or thoughts of what should be in there, if you could just let me know that, and I'll try and get that done by the end of next week, so you guys can have a chance to look at it. Any other communications? I had an email today from Zeke Goodband wondering about the fields, and has asked, the select board's talking about it tomorrow night, so I may try to go to that before the Act 46 meeting. Anybody else is welcome to join, but if we have a quorum, that would be too late for me to warn it. So if anybody's dying to go tomorrow, seeing no one, I don't think we're gonna have a quorum, so. Would you be willing to go?
I might, yeah, what
Okay.
time is their meeting start, 6:30?
No, it's just 6. He thought it would be happening around 6:15.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can go.
Okay. Oh, that'd be great. Okay.
Stephen, can I just, is this about the fields in terms of the
Potential
town taking?
taking over the fields. Just that ongoing discussion, so. And I also just received this from BCTV, and, just 5 minutes ago. So there, as a town official of a district, we're invited to the BCTV annual members meeting, September 27th from 6 to 7, room 306 of the Brattleboro Municipal Center. What I'll do is, since I don't have a email copy of this, I can photocopy this and give this to everybody at the end of the meeting, so that they can.
What date was it?
September 27th, 6 to 7 o'clock, the Municipal Center, room 306. And the producer awards party on Thursday, November 2nd, from 6 to 8. So I'll give everybody copies of that. Or if you want to take a picture of it.
I have one other thing.
Mhm.
You guys probably all got notification about it, but the regional meeting of the BSBA is on the 26th. I'm at the high school, and I would strongly encourage you to go. It's a great opportunity to learn more.
What is it?
It is at 5, and a light dinner is provided, and then it's for like the first half hour. And then we launch into the meeting about 5:30.
So I'm just realizing that should be when we would have our second meeting of the month. So, And it starts pretty early, right? So we couldn't
It's
tag
5.
so that we can't tag on early to that. So maybe we won't have so then we won't have a chance to review this unless we have a meeting another time earlier.
But the topic is cost containment, I think. But it's a great opportunity to learn what's going on in the other districts around us, because it doesn't include like Marlboro and Rockingham and
It's the whole-
such, so
It's the whole county, right?
regional, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also you hopefully have gotten a mailing about the annual meeting that is in October. and-
I'm still not on email list, so.
Yeah, okay, well,
I
you will get
emailed
soon
to
enough.
Carrie Lamb the other day, so.
You give me, I got something from you.
Usually they're pretty quick about adding you in, so you should start seeing information soon, so.
You're getting those communications, Michael?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up the date, and I think that I'm glad we talked about the fact that our meeting is normally scheduled for today, because I was intending to sign up that
Yeah,
we should decide.
we should decide if we're
probably
having a
If
meeting.
we're having a meeting or not.
Right,
Well, I will be going to the VSBA meeting.
because you're a representative,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, not that that affects you guys, but.
So, how about we not have a meeting on 9/26 so everybody can attend the VSBA meeting? So we'll just have one meeting in September? All right. I know you like this one, it's close, but
I know.
nothing is better than close, so.
I guess that's true.
Any other communications? So,
So in terms of the article, you just email
so
us
I'll
and
just
then we can
email and
give
just
you
give me
feedback.
individual
And then you
feedback.
can,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Yep.
if I have to call a meeting, an emergency meeting for it next week for some big crisis, but it doesn't sound like an earth-shaking document, so. All right, recognition of groups and or individuals.
This is right.
Unusually quiet today. But we do have Janice Stockman with us, who is from the WSESU, who is the Director of Early Education?
Coordinator.
Coordinator, okay. Coordinator of Early Education for the SU, and she's here to talk to us a little bit about the process of setting up pre-K, as well as giving us a primer on the process of Head Start and the ups and downs about that, because it's been so much information coming at me from various sources, so that we can really understand what's involved, and from your perspective, what it is that we could offer here, and what you see as the opportunities and the challenges for setting up this program. So, I mean, I had sent you some of my personal questions and
Right.
things that had come up in previous meetings about pre-K, but we're at the very initial stages and have just heard informally from many people in the community that this would be really, a lot of people would be very interested in having it, having preschool right here in the school. We don't have pre-K. There's one maybe small one that started up, but I'm not even sure if it can partner with anyone in Dummerston, so a lot of people have to commute into Brattleboro. If they're working from home, that's not the most convenient thing to do. We also think it'd be a really good way to identify children who have needs earlier, where it's less expensive and better for the children to do earlier interventions. And it would also make for a more seamless transition for kids from pre-K into the kindergarten and into the school. And I think with the resources we have here, we could offer a really amazing program with, you know, all the specials that we have here and all the resources that we have. We have our own fabulous school nurse and art teacher and things like that. So in looking at all this, as other towns have come to this thought that this might be a good thing to do, we are there now as well. So I guess it would be really lovely to hear what the process is that we would have to go through. I mean, I know we have to, I've been kind of reading as much as I need to know. We have to engage the community, but in sort of getting the process together, what would the process be to set up a pre-K in-house?
Well, I think that the very first step you would want to do is make sure that you've engaged the community as you're talking about it, to get a sense of how many preschoolers are out there, and how many would use preschool here at Dummerston School. What they see the needs are, what are the gaps, or like what's the lack of access to preschool education that they're experiencing now. And then once you've done that, really work together with families and school board members and the school here to kind of create a vision for what Dummerston's preschool would be like, and how would it be different from the other preschools that are available to families that are in the wider community. So Dummerston may not have any, Dummerston I think doesn't have any pre-qualified preschools that are able to partner with school districts, but certainly Brattleboro does.
Mhm.
And I brought with me some numbers of Dummerston kids who are taking advantage of programs that are in the community. So this year, Dummerston has 17 3- and 4-year-olds enrolled in community-based programs that are receiving the public funding.
Okay.
Also have a breakdown. So 8 of them are 3, and 9 of them are 4.
Mhm.
So those 9 next year will go off to kindergarten. And right now, anyway, we know that there are 8 kids taking advantage of publicly funded preschool
Mhm.
who would be 4-year-olds next year.
Mhm.
And then, there's move-ins and move-outs and
And
things
others
like
that aren't taking part.
and others that we don't know about, right. They may be going to family-based preschool in, home
Yeah,
home programs. Some may not be taking advantage of it at all. I don't know about those.
I have
kids.
heard some feedback from some families that it's hard to get the 10-hour slot, and preschool can be very expensive to sign up for the 40-hour slot. So I've heard that from a couple of different people, that they can't find 10 hours, which is what is publicly
Mhm.
funded.
Right.
So,
So then that's, there are some programs that offer a 10-hour option, but they're not numerous, and there's some, they tend to fill up fast.
yes, yeah.
So if, that would be an option
Mhm.
for Dummerston, is to offer a 10-hour a week option. But that's where your engagement with the community comes into play, because
Right.
do people need more than that?
Mhm.
If they're working, obviously, they may need more. Some people can put various options together, some family care, some
Mhm.
10 hours a week.
Is there any data that would suggest what is the right amount of pre-K for a 4-year-old?
I don't know of any research data
Yeah.
about that,
Hmm.
but 4-year-olds are going to be in a full school day in, the following year.
Right.
So something building up to a full school day would be
Mhm.
great. I think if you look around our community and throughout the state, there are a lot of 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds who are in full-time care because families need that.
Of course, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and often sometimes they're in for a longer day when they're 3 and 4 than they are when
I
they
know.
come to school and are in kindergarten and, grade, so. But, in its great wisdom, the state of Vermont has decided that pre-K education is adequate, is 10 hours a week is adequate to deliver pre-K education. I think some would argue with that.
Yeah, we're just wondering if there was any data as to what is, you look at 2 4-year-olds, and that's a big span of time, a beginning 4-year-old and an end 4-year-old, that's a
Mhm.
huge developmental difference. But I was just
Yeah.
curious from a research standpoint if there was any long-term studies.
Not
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
And so, I think Lyle had told us last time that offering a program for 3-year-olds was significantly different than offering a program for 4-year-olds. And so can you just outline for us in general, just so that we understand, if people in town ask us, why wouldn't you let my 3-year-old come and my,
Well, I think a program for 3 and 4-year-olds, and there are many of those in the community too, that a mixed age group is actually fairly common. What happens when you have 3-year-olds is that you have kids who may never have been away from home before. They're really little, and they're learning from the very sort of basics about how to be in a group, how to follow routines. So it is a little bit more, it's probably a lot less academic than you might expect 4-year-olds in a 4-year-old class to be able to handle. 3-year-olds are probably still learning a lot of self-care, so it wouldn't surprise me at all that there would be kids in diapers or kids who are not yet fully toilet trained if you had a 3- and 4-year-old mixed classroom. In early childhood, we have to consider what's called a teacher-child ratio. So there are regulations that govern that. So regulations would say that for 3- and 4-year-olds, there could be 1 teacher for every 10 kids, 2 teachers for every 20 children. But I would highly recommend, especially if there are 3-year-olds in the group, that you be much more generous with the teacher-child ratio than that. And I would say that the classrooms that I see that operate the most smoothly have 3 teachers for at least part of the day.
And so, do you mean teachers versus paras, or
I mean 3 adults.
3 adults?
So it's usually 1 lead teacher
Mhm.
or licensed teacher and 2 paras.
With up to how many kids in that room?
Well,
Like when you're talking
again,
about that
I think
scenario?
optimal 15,
Okay.
15, 16.
And is there a difference in the regulations for a preschool for a 3-year-old versus a 4-year-old?
No, the early childhood program regulations for 3 to 5-year-olds they're the same.
Okay.
If you go younger than 3, then you have different ratios and
Right.
different things to consider.
Janice, those regulations are different than they are for kindergarten up.
Yeah, these are regulations that come out of the Department for Children and Families and tend to govern young children in settings that are early care and education, child care, and preschool. So I think we're finding that the school-based preschools are kind of beholden to 2 state agencies, Department for Children and Families and the Agency of Education. The regulations that you have to follow to be a preschool sometimes seem like they're duplicative of of the systems that are already present in schools. Sometimes they conflict slightly. It's a little bit to manage.
Mm-hmm. Of the public school, preschool, in-house preschool partnerships, are most of them 4-year-olds or 3 4-year-olds, or is there?
In our SU,
Yeah.
they're all 4-year-olds.
They're all 4-year-olds.
Yeah. And that would be Putney, Guilford, and Oak Grove. And Guilford and Oak Grove are brand new this year.
And Christina, when you say partnership,
Oh, well.
do you mean that the preschool would be working with early ed services or like Head Start?
Well, that's the next question, I
Okay.
guess, if we would go down that path.
You have that answer. That-
Well, I would be very surprised if you have Head Start eligible children many of them in Dummerston.
Yeah, Deb Gass said at most in the previous years you've had 2,
Yeah.
and this year possibly none.
Yeah, I don't think I would count on enough of a number of Head Start eligible kids so that you could see that as a source of revenue or offsetting costs.
So one just thought I had heard that people were looking for slots for Head Start so that Head Start students could be spread out more evenly in a population, and that Head Start students did not have to necessarily come from Dummerston. Is that correct, or?
Yeah, I think it probably is correct. The Head Start program in our area is operated by Early Education Services, and they cover the entire county.
Mm-hmm.
Conceivably, I suppose there could be a Brattleboro child who went to Dummerston, but again, that they would have to transportation
Right.
up here, and then how would you, I mean, you would have kids who are here but are not planning on going to kindergarten.
Right.
Which is contrary to some of your goals for having a preschool.
How many preschool slots would there have to be to make it be a Head Start site?
I don't really know.
In some conversation I had with somebody somewhere along there, so they were really looking for sites to kind of spread out the population so it wasn't so concentrated, and so I thought it was worth
Yeah.
talking about, even though it may not fulfill the goals entirely of the Dummerston
Right.
Town School Board, it may fill some other goals.
Right.
So
Right.
I wanted
At
to
one
explore
point,
that.
Head Start did have kids in Brattleboro preschool, community-based preschools,
Mhm.
and I think that achieved the goal of sort of having a more integrated
Mhm.
model where not so many Head Start kids were concentrated in one building or one classroom.
But that's not so much a need right now, and it would
You
not
would
be.
have to talk to Deb Gass.
Okay.
And Head Start. They stopped doing that.
Okay.
When we looked even in the Oak Grove situation where there are 7 or 8 Head Start students, one of the biggest concerns was that Head Start offers year-round, full-day care, whereas the public pre-K is running a school year, school day program. So fortunately, Deb Gass and Head Start were very accommodating by saying, you can bring your child to one of our classrooms for vacations or in the summer.
Mhm.
So they've accommodated those kids in that way. But those are things that Deb Gass could
Okay.
talk with us about. Guilford started by looking at bringing in Head Start kids from Brattleboro. They stopped. I don't remember why. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there weren't
There weren't
enough kids in Guilford that were in Head Start.
And it's not really on the way someplace with the
Right.
schools
Yeah.
particularly.
Yeah,
so-
and Head Start serves a very low income population. Transportation is often a challenge.
Right.
This Dummerston isn't on the way to
We're the
where
center of the
people
universe.
go.
Those were and so once we have a vision of what we would want to do, what are the
Oh,
next
what are the next
steps?
steps?
That sounds like the easy part is the visioning, and then the hard part is probably making
It happen, yeah. Well, you would, you actually need to submit an application to the Agency of Education and Department for Children and Families whenever a school is considering establishing a new school-based preschool.
Mhm.
And this is because the state is concerned about schools offering preschools and then siphoning off kids from the private providers. So they will want to know that there's a need, an unmet need in Dummerston for preschool. That Dummerston kids don't have access to preschools, or for some reason they're unaffordable.
Mhm.
You're gonna have to demonstrate a need that the state will recognize and approve you to open a preschool. I brought a copy of the application. It's something that you would fill online, so would you like it?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my next question. Was
The Agency of Education's universal pre-kindergarten page on their website
Mhm.
is full of all kinds of resources, this included, that you'll want to probably explore
Okay.
as you move forward with this. I will say that something to consider as you're doing your needs assessment, maybe your community engagement, is to consider where the kids these 17 kids already are,
Mhm.
and how that will change the economic environment for preschools in our community. So right now, you have kids enrolled at Neighborhood Schoolhouse, Sexton's River Montessori, Timpson Hill, the Garland School, Horizon Early Learning, Winston Prouty Center, Hilltop Montessori, and the Westby Nursery School. All of them are in Brattleboro except for Saxton's River and Timpson Hill.
And so
Pretty
how,
well spread out.
Pretty well spread out, yeah.
how do we document that need? Is it discussions with families? It's not a survey or?
I mean, I suppose you could decide to do a survey, but I don't think this application requires hard data like that. I mean, we have some hard data already.
Wouldn't we identify over and above, try to identify over and above the 17 that are currently enrolled and target them for discussion?
Would probably be the first,
Because they aren't taking advantage of the existing program. So that would be key to identifying the unmet need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the people, that's a good suggestion, and people actually already enrolled may not be enrolled full-time
Mm-hmm.
in those programs and may want a greater length of day, or, you know, maybe they only go 2 or 3 days a week or something like that, and I don't know, questions to find out.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. One is do they have access? So are there kids in Dummerston who are staying home and parents would rather them have an experience, but they don't have a car, they don't know about preschools, they're uncomfortable sending them to a town outside or too far away. So, I mean, the access piece is one thing. And then affordability is a factor. So there's the funding for 10 hours, but, you know, most kids aren't in 10 hours. And families are responsible to pay for the amount of time above 10 hours that their children are enrolled. And some families are eligible for child care subsidies that help them with that cost, but some aren't. And affordability is definitely a factor.
so would child care subsidies come to a public? Okay,
No.
I didn't think so.
If you aren't charging tuition, then you.
It doesn't, make sense.
Are you aware of how the new pre-Ks that you identified earlier, I guess it was Guilford and Oak Grove, was Oak Grove the other one? Are you aware of how they met that criteria under the AOE's application for showing the need or the?
Yeah, I mean, it was some numbers that I had.
Right,
I
okay.
think we also had to look at vacancy rates in the community, like, so how many of the existing preschools were fully enrolled. So if there was no vacancies in the preschools, that made a better case for starting something. And that changes from year to year, so this year may be different.
Right.
How do you get, is that data that you have?
I was able to get that data from Wyndham Childcare, Margaret
Okay.
Atkinson at Wyndham Childcare. So they have now come under the umbrella of Winston Prouty Center, so I assume they're still
Right.
doing that.
Guilford also had a board meeting specifically inviting anyone who might have children that would be interested in.
Mhm.
And I think you were as well, absolutely stunned at the number of young people coming in saying, we would love to have a place for our 4-year-olds to go to school.
That might be something to do for the article, is have a set time and just say on this date we're
That's
meeting
a great
about,
idea, yeah.
Mhm.
to have a community forum about
Mhm.
the need
Yeah.
for.
As you move forward, I think it's important to be realistic about how much this costs.
Yeah.
It's not, I think it's substantial to start a program, start a new classroom. There's the staff costs. You may have to renovate a classroom. You'll probably have to renovate a playground or build playground equipment that's suitable for younger kids. I think those are some issues that Guilford and Oak Grove are in the middle of right now. Furnishing a classroom, there are costs involved in that. And there's something sort of new to me on the horizon, which is I think there's a teacher shortage of licensed early childhood educators. We noticed that when we were interviewing and hiring for the positions at Guilford and Oak Grove. But even more than that, I'm seeing practically every day, at least 3 days a week, emails coming out from the early childhood department at the AOE, advertising openings. Still, after school has started, places are all around the state, schools and community programs are looking for licensed early childhood educators. And so the demand and the number of programs that need a licensed teacher is outpacing the supply of them. And I think that's a real big thing for us to think about in the field.
Anecdotally, I can think of 3 people that I know that were early ed teachers that went to teach in the public school because of the pay benefit incredible step up. So
Mhm.
if they're part of this system, it might be a way to attract people
Mm-hmm.
into that field, because
Yeah.
it's quite a discrepancy between what you make at an early childhood ed center and what you
Very true.
So it may be an advantage
Mm-hmm.
to lure somebody back to what was their passion.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Do you have a ballpark on what or have knowledge of? I mean, I probably should pick up the phone and call Beth Bristol, but what it's roughly costing, what we could anticipate, and I guess the renovation costs are really gonna be.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
And Guilford applied for a grant, and part of that grant is specifically for like a new playground with playground
Mhm.
equipment, so that's come off the local. Yeah, that would be hard, but maybe Beth would know. Have a ballpark.
That's a great.
Places had classrooms though,
They had classrooms.
targeted already for that.
Space, right.
Mhm.
Space is the other
Yeah.
piece. I don't know if you have an empty classroom.
We don't particularly, so
Mhm.
it would take some creativity on our part,
Yeah.
I would think. She made me think of another question. Are there grants available to help with those costs?
That was a unique situation
Yeah.
with that being Guilford having a Promise Community grant that they were able to share with the school.
Oh, so it was a town grant or something? that they-
Mhm.
When I was one of the founders of Brattleboro Center for Children, and I know that when I was out looking to raise funds, that there were definitely grants. It's a private program, but there were
Excellent.
And we
Okay.
wrote for grants and things like that. too,
And
so.
that was a
It's
nonprofit,
Yeah.
so,
By the 1, 2, 3, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
so that might be a little different from
Mm.
schools.
We have some good grant writers in town, so maybe they can.
And just so you know too, I was their treasurer for several years as well, and the child care subsidies did not match costs
Oh, I'm sure not, no.
for the classrooms. And we did classrooms from infant on up to 4-year-old,
Yeah.
so. So it was, you know, a challenging
Mhm.
time sometimes making payroll, but.
Yeah, I think it's part of the larger conversation of you're gonna have initial costs, and then what would the ongoing costs be, and would there be savings in terms of, identification of special needs at an earlier age, so it's less expensive in the long run, you know, and
Oh,
does it make,
With that though, isn't that the role of Triple E, is to identify
Mm-hmm.
children?
but not if they're not in,
They gotta be in a program.
they have to be in a
somewhere.
program.
If they
Well,
can identify.
I think, you know, that's the other hat that I wear, and, we definitely have identified and worked with kids who are not in programs, and they might get referred by a parent, a
Mhm.
family member, a doctor,
Mhm.
so, you know, we are working with them. It is a little more challenging if they're not in a preschool. It's easier to serve them and
Mhm.
provide, you know, better and more robust services when they're in the company of peers
Right.
and in a classroom setting.
I know, given the fact that I have 4 kids, I spent quite a bit of time in preschool. I was also the enrollment coordinator for Brattleboro Nursery School for 5 years or so. And one of the things that we did to attract children or families was to offer different options rather than
Mhm.
just the 5-day-a-week. We did 3 and 2,
Mhm.
and then we sort of, you know, metered it out in terms of, and the cost was calculated. It worked out well. It definitely, we were in a time of declining enrollment, and it boosted enrollment back up. And then
But you
when I
won't have to worry about that,
right.
collecting tuition or making payroll.
Well, but your ratio you have to think about, so if it's an interesting question, will we have to staff for all children to be there 5 days, when some parents might feel like 5 days is too much for their
Right.
child and they don't need it? So then will we need to bring that, you know, maybe we have 9 kids that are actually there every day, so it's, you know, just in terms of the economics of it,
Mhm.
if it's something families aren't interested in having, would we staff for children that don't plan on coming, so
Mhm.
maybe.
Right, that's,
Right, and we when I was graduated finally from nursery school, about that time, we had started an aftercare. So
Mhm.
the program would go to noon, and then after that, there was aftercare, and one of the teachers stayed on and managed that part of it. But the 2-day slots were generally dedicated more to the 3-year-olds. And then the 3 and then the 5-day slots were, you know, dedicated to the 4-year-olds. But it was an interesting
mhm.
sort of mix. But definitely offering those options definitely attracted families to the school.
Yeah, and maybe half-day options too, especially for middle where 3-year-olds, you stay until lunch and then.
Yeah.
The more options you provide, the trickier it is
Yeah.
to schedule.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why all of our other district programs have been 5 days, school day, all 4-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
We love Joe Carroll, we don't need to.
Well, my plan was actually to meet with John and with Jerry and observe and see what, you know, what they hadn't anticipated happening.
Mhm.
For example, the whole DCF piece of that, that's, I had no idea
Yeah.
that that agency was an agency that we were beholden to if we were to start a preschool. But just to see, you know,
Yeah, I also think that there's a lot of knowledge out there in the early childhood community, like Amy was talking about her experiences, and you know, others of you probably. It's not a surprise to me because I know about that, but having watched principals struggle through the application for a program license and to try to understand the regulations about this or that has been a bit of an eye-opener, and I bet it was kind of shocking to them as they were going along. So it's very interesting to watch this. There's the whole world of early childhood childcare and preschool, and as schools kind of get on board and see the value of starting earlier in a school building, there are two worlds coming together.
and when you had mentioned the economic piece of it too, I think the economic piece may end up being with the private daycare providers in Dummerston, who have children that are, you know,
Yeah.
4 years old. Who, you know, parents given the choice may absolutely adopt
Mm-hmm.
coming to school.
Right, I think you have some in Dummerston who've been doing home childcare for many years.
Yeah. It was interesting when, years ago when we had talked about thinking outside the box and looking at ways of continuing a K-8 with lowering enrollment, we talked about the libraries, especially the Lydia had,
Oh, yeah.
and found out that you couldn't have adult books. There had to be a certain amount of feet or space between adolescent and children books and adult books. It's like, who would have came up with that rule? And just those sort of things that you, unanticipated consequences of
Yeah.
the greatest intentions.
There are new regulations, so I'm not sure they
Yeah.
made it into the new regs.
We did just find out this week that a substitute in a pre-K has to be fingerprinted by DCF and fingerprinted by the agency of ed. So it's like every
So that's
week
half
we're
the year
finding out
before you-
something new.
If we go forward with this, I'm glad we're not the first school doing
Really?
this. So we get the benefit
We're finding out
of
all
everybody
the,
else's
hidden
kinks
regs,
in all
right.
of this. Anybody have any other questions?
The only other thing was that I know that when Putney, one of the precursors to Putney's was a position, and it may have been a grant-funded position, that went out into the community for a couple of years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Either working in the homes or sort of bringing kids in on a small scale periodically, you know, wading in the water of preschool,
Mm-hmm.
and before sort of deciding to make the plunge in.
Mhm.
And they found it incredibly beneficial to sort of know these kids ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
be able to anticipate, you know, the cost during budget season of what might be happening. And at the same time, one of their big, I think, preschools closed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was kind of a perfect storm for them.
And I think that person built relationships with families
Yes,
that
yeah.
enabled and brought them into the school.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Sort of like Sue doing her story hours, you know.
Right.
Be-
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's
How
a good
different it would be
intro-
if we were building off of that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
That might be an interesting interim step to consider.
Mm-hmm.
What is the teacher certification required for an in-house pre-K?
It's Vermont,
Early ed license.
it's the early childhood endorsement on a Vermont teacher license.
Okay.
It could also be an early childhood special ed endorsement.
else? I bet there'll be more questions down the road as we walk
Yeah,
down
I'm
this road,
happy
but-
to come back or email, through email,
Okay.
help to support.
Well, this was incredibly helpful to me to kind of identify this nebulous situation. I have a high schooler and an 8th grader, so it's been a while.
Uh-huh, yeah.
But I do remember that. It was Mary that took the kids in the afternoon, right?
Kim.
Kim. Oh, no. It was Mary. Or maybe it was a different one. But used to be I knew every opening in preschool anywhere.
Right, right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you.
Janice. I
Thank
really
you.
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
Oh, I went longer than I thought we would, but. Okay, moving on to the administrative report.
I just have one thing that will need to be an executive session
Okay.
concerning ongoing litigation.
Okay.
Well, we had a great start. It was so smooth. I said to Christina, it's so much easier being in school when everybody's here than it is getting ready for everybody to come. It just was flawless, and I'm proud to report that. This is the first full week of kindergarten, but hey, I'll tell you, those kindergartners start off better liner uppers, walking in the halls quietly,
Hallmark
answer
of
themselves.
Dummerston.
They say to the 8th grade, you are the role models, but look at the kindergarten class after day 2. So it's just been great. This week, yesterday, we did the 5 through 8 kickoff for Skills Lab, where groups were meeting to develop their persona of how they were going to move through Skills Lab throughout the year, which was a fun assembly. Christina mentioned we have the K to 4 open house on Monday, the 18th, next Monday, and the 5 to 8 open house on September 25th, the following Monday. We do have, we've set them up as traditional open houses. Be here from 6:30 to 7:30. Come in. We do have a few things planned so that we can get to know each other and know the new families, and they can get to know the school. We will have big brothers, big sisters here set up just to have a conversation with anybody that asks that they're looking for bigs. And they are able at this point in time to take referrals for littles, which is great. I think that we'll probably have some information from PTFO and their major fundraising campaign that's underway. And I can't remember if I talked last time about the playground, but the playground has been significantly upgraded. Thank you to the TiVos for their work. Interesting that Janice talked about needing to accommodate a preschool in terms of the playground. But I know that some of the fundraising that's planned for this year, I think the swings are kind of the last frontier in terms of upgrades out there. So it's just something to keep in mind. Since we last met, we have been able to hire a girls soccer coach. It's Maddie Lynch, who's just hit the ground running, which is great. Former Dummerston student. And Nancy, of course, is the boys soccer coach, and their first game was tonight.
And they won
They did. Excellent.
handily.
Both girls and boys?
I wasn't here for the girls,
Girls.
so I was out with
Okay.
Max's team
Great.
in Westmoreland.
And I will also correct from last time when we met, when I talked about the extraordinary increases that we had on our SBAC scores in 2017. While we did increase in math, we went up 7% overall. We went down 5% in English language arts, but that was from 80% down to 75% meeting and exceeding the standard. Or proficient and then super proficient. So, I think, as always, you know, the results are the results, and we'll use them to our advantage and look through them and see what we need to do to keep the progress moving forward.
Do you know, maybe it's a question for Lyle, do you know, have the state numbers been somewhat level overall?
You know, I just saw something before I left today from Rebecca Holcomb about embargoed, and I have not opened it yet, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Which I may have.
Right, which we may not have been able to talk
Right.
about.
Okay. Oops.
Yeah.
So, moving right along.
That's what happens when you have good relationships with your board, you tell them things before you post it.
Do you know when the data will be released to the public? Because I've gotten several requests, informal requests from members of the public that are often here about when when that data would be available.
I'll see if I
So
can.
if I could just answer that would. I feel like I wake up in the morning and I look to see if the results have been released on the state board website. So. In terms of open house, we had spoken a while ago about having a small presentation at open house to discuss all the opportunities that are available to parents to become involved in their children's education to the benefit of the parent, the child, and the greater school community.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, ELF, having somebody talk. Is that, I know it's very late now for me to think about that, but is there a possibility of doing that? Because I think, I remember as a new parent, I was like, Steve Caprell was there doing ELF, but then it was like, oh, and then there's this, and then there's that. And I think we need parents to make all these things work in the school. And I think that's a really great time at the beginning of the year to say, we need help with winter activities. We need chaperones for this. We need parent volunteers for ELF. And it's a great opportunity to work in your, you know, the curriculum set, and you really get to see how the classroom's running and be involved.
Yes. So we talked, yes, we can do that. Were we gonna do that together? All right,
I
it's
would
fine.
offer to do it as a parent who's done a lot of those things, or if anybody else would like to volunteer to do that. As parent, Amy, you've done everything, right?
I mean,
PTFO. I mean, I just think there's so many things just to have a 5 minute, like we really need everybody's help to make this school a
right.
great community.
And the only reason I'm hesitating, because I absolutely now, when you say that, remember talking about that. We just had talked about bringing people in at the very beginning, but people come in at different times, that was the problem, and then bringing them at the end in to the gym to stand there wasn't sort of the best.
How about some kind of flyer?
Yeah, could we do like a flyer and a clipboard? Would you like to learn more about volunteer
we can.
opportunities that you could, you know, maybe a big poster and a clipboard? And
Yep.
I mean, I might have a couple older kids that could be assigned to do that, helping out, you know.
Yes. And it can be, yes, that's good.
You know what I
We can
mean?
have,
And they can put their, we can have just a simple thing,
Yeah.
name, address,
I can do
telephone, or
that.
email address, telephone number, you
And
know.
we can have it
What are you interested in?
teachers' scavenger hunts to seek out the
That's good, yeah.
volunteer table, or
yeah.
find the activity that
Good
the parents are
idea.
most interested in.
Oh, that's an even better
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, that fits, I got it.
I like that a lot, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. And, I don't have it with me, but it's in the office. Our new hire, Mr. Marshall, our STEM 7th and 8th grade teacher, had his book published. And we have a signed autograph, first edition here, waiting to, for me to give it over to the library, which I'm not ready to do yet. It's just at this point being distributed to friends and families. They're waiting for the second edition with upgrades of the illustrations to be printed before it goes into mass distribution. But he field tested it on our students through the ELF program, and yeah, so
Wonderful.
it's
That's
great.
great.
It's
That's great.
and it's just a wonderful book.
Excellent. Look forward to borrowing your sign.
Should have brought it in and
Copy.
stuck it in front of the camera.
It's really great to have people like that
Oh,
in
I
our school
know,
community,
I know.
really, and showing
Yeah,
kids what you can do,
Yeah.
you know.
and
In
it's
the
about,
world.
the back says 3 ordinary children having an extraordinary adventure in the forest, 3 extraordinary adventures, so.
9 o'clock tomorrow.
9 o'clock tomorrow. Oh, really?
Yes, 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're not gonna talk
Oh.
about the SBAC scores until 9 o'clock
So
tomorrow.
9
my
o'clock
God.
tomorrow. I think they're out of town, so. Anything else on administrative? Excellent.
Do we need to do finances?
Oh my God, how did I miss that? I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
We recognize Dennis and then Smith.
I know, I'm sorry. Oh. Thank you, Amy. I would entertain a motion to approve the warrant dated 9/12/17 for $168,756.02.
I move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections, abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Amy, for catching that. And the Dummerston Alternative Subcommittee. We have met, anybody else want to take that? Tired of hearing my voice, so you guys must be just really done with it. We've met twice since the last school board meeting. The most recent meeting, we were joined by David Scholes and Kim Price from the Brattleboro Town School Board. David Scholes with the Brattleboro Town School Board and the Dummerston Alternative Group were interested in working, sending out an invitation to the other towns to see if they had an interest in joining and having a facilitated discussion just to vision and put on the table every town's needs. We've heard back at this point from Vernon that they want to send 3 people to a meeting on the 21st. Everybody's welcome to attend. It will be at the Green Street School, I believe at 6 o'clock. I will email everybody, because it's on a scattered bunch, I will email everybody in the Dummerston Town School Board the time and the room number and the place if anybody's interested in meeting. And he's gotten a facilitator from Westminster just to help the discusussion move forward. We have not heard back from Guilford or Putney at this point. We also talked a little bit more about the town academy model at the most recent meeting, as well as talking about, from the Dummerston alone perspective for an alternative governance structure, just looking at the goals, the town survey, and starting to flesh out what we would do to meet the goals of Act 46 that would be in line with the vision of the town of Dummerston that we had from the survey and what we've heard from people in town. Is that a fair way to
I'd say so.
put it? I think I've said this before, one of the needs that I think everybody agreed with was allowing children to move. It's good for kids if the school isn't working out, and allowing them to stay if a school is working out, and how we could accommodate that. There's another district that currently does that within their SU. They have a sort of half tuition arrangement. It's either Two Rivers or Twin Rivers, it's somewhere up there. So we've been looking at trying to create a policy for that if an alternative governance structure would go forward. We also talked a fair amount about how the SU as a whole and the enhanced SU could help out towns that are experiencing difficulty for whatever reason. At some point we could all face declining enrollment, and so how the districts could work together to try to help schools remain viable in the short term, and different processes for doing that. What am I forgetting?
I didn't bring the notes with me.
I did, actually.
You did?
Just minutes. We talked about also things that could be done to lighten the superintendent and the SU office's load for meetings. We've talked about that a bunch of times. And then we also started looking at sort of the data of how Dummerston's doing versus the goals of Act 46. Went through the educational quality standards, SBAC scores, part of that, how the town, transparency, accountability, all those things that are the goals of Act 46. So started to kind of put together pieces. If we end up doing an alternative government structure just Dummerston, we would have that kind of fleshed out. If it was an alternative government structure with the SU as it currently stands, a lot of these things would transfer to that structure as well. So I think after the next Thursday's meeting, I think we'll have a little bit more. 21st, right?
Oh, the big one, yeah.
Yeah, the big meeting, sorry, the big meeting.
Yeah, because we skipped the little one.
Yes. Anything? Anything, any questions? Everybody's welcome to come on the 21st. All right. Act 46.
We had our meeting at the end of August, and we reviewed the Dummerston board's feedback. Some of the changes were incorporated into it, others weren't. And then the other boards really didn't have a whole lot of input like we did. And then once those changes were incorporated into the finished articles, the committee voted to send it to submit it to the AOE for review, which has happened. And we have a meeting tomorrow. I believe it's at in the Houston room. Yeah, at the high school, 6 o'clock, to talk about what steps we need to do. We are on the agenda for the 20th, right, with the State Board of Ed. But it's looking like a vote on the 11th, or November 7th, sorry. November 7th, it's, general election day, so that would be the day. And then, we've got informational meetings scheduled tentatively in all the area communities, and there's a bunch of work that needs to happen prior to that too, in terms of, getting information out about to folks who might be interested in serving on a unified board, because they need to submit their petitions to be on the ballot for November 7th. So.
And we set the date for there has to be an informational meeting within X number of days, and we set the date for the Dummerston informational meeting.
Yeah, it was the 30th, I believe, October 30th.
Oh yeah, it was October 30th, yeah.
Yeah. So, yep.
So Amy, any problems with having a general election to vote on the 7th?
Nope.
The only reason they didn't want it last year on the 7th is it was a presidential election, and they
Okay.
thought it would just
Yeah.
take too
Yeah.
much, but
Yeah,
this time it's
Yeah.
not a.
yeah.
Because they couldn't use the automated ballots then.
Right.
You've got a good memory.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
It would have made everything
Yeah.
have to be hand tallied and
Yeah.
really difficult.
They just add,
Of course.
Seventh.
it would be
November
good for
7th.
people to know if they are
then,
interested in
oh,
running,
30th.
that petitions are available September 21st and have to be back October 2nd. I want to get those dates right.
That's correct.
But petitions will be
Yes, that's
available next week.
Yep.
And there's a very short turnaround, so we want to make sure, yes, it's October 2. We want to make sure that if anybody out there listening in Dummerston or anywhere else that wants to run for an at-large or for your town, September 21 petitions are available.
And that, how many signatures for the at-large can come from anywhere?
Anywhere, 60.
60, and then the
30.
30.
Yeah.
So if you're running for the Dummerston seat, it's 30 from Dummerston. If you're running for the at-large seat, it's 60 from anywhere. In the district,
Right.
not.
Minus Vernon at this point.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no Vernon's.
Thank you for that, Lau.
I have a question about the articles. Which version of the articles? Because I went to look at the website today, and I was curious as to which version actually got submitted.
Do you have one that says final?
I have one that says final and
Yep.
September 11th, which is that?
Yes,
That is the final.
that's yesterday. Yes.
So I guess that begs the question: is like,
When
if
is
you guys had
September
a
11th?
meeting back in August, how did a final version?
Because we had to wait for Chris Leopold to get back to us, to tell us about the proportionality of the
Okay.
members, and he did that on Friday.
Okay.
And so I talked with Donna Russo Savage Friday afternoon, and she said, send them to us. If he's made no other changes, he hadn't.
Right.
So after hearing from him and making any of the changes that actually were approved, they were submitted as final, and I put them as final just to know
Okay.
that that's the one that was actually submitted to the
Okay.
AOE.
You said some of the changes were adopted and some of them weren't. Is it easy to kind of?
The wording ones were
Okay.
the ones that were adopted.
think every
About the
single
town vote and
Okay.
grade, school closure, town vote on school closure and grade, middle school grade movement, that was
Okay.
not entertained at all.
Okay. And then just generally, I had a question. I saw that there was an attachment where the Brattleboro Town School District signed off on Vernon's withdrawal.
That's
The
the
BUH.
BUH.
It's not
Sorry.
Brattleboro Town.
My mistake. BUHS District Number 6. Who owns the debts and liabilities and benefits of the WSES or of the Brattleboro Union High School District Number 6?
Now everybody but Vernon.
Okay,
So Vernon, after this year, because they're still considered until July or
Mhm.
June 30th, they still are paying their per pupil assessment,
right.
whatever that is. But after July 1 next year, they no longer are paying anything. However, if we were to sell the UHS, they would also not be able to receive any of the assets from the account.
I guess that begs the question for me of who would have to vote on whether BUHS District Number 6 was to sell assets.
That would be the WSESU board, of which you are
Right.
a member, right?
Yes.
Yes,
And they
Finance
would vote,
Committee, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
That's where it would come, that's where it would come from, and then it would come through the WSESU board.
But the town boards, they're proportional, I guess that's the representation, that's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where was our representation on the BUHS District Number 6 board? to-
Ruth Barton.
Ruth Barton, she voted in favor, it was unanimous vote.
Fair enough.
And although I just want to sort of clarify, one thing is Vernon may not necessarily pull out of the district, right? That
They're pulled out of BU number 6, and depending upon what the Board of Education says next week, because they're also going to be on the agenda, they'll either be out of BU number 6 or not. I assume they will be because they went through the whole process of going through the legislature and all of that. Part of the district, I think that the Board of Education is going to give them direction on what that means. I don't know that anyone's done this before, and so we're not sure
unclear.
if they'll be assigned to another or if they'll be on their own. We don't know that yet.
Any other questions, thoughts? Yes.
That BUHS number 6 board vote was recorded, so you can see their discussion.
Mhm.
I actually videotaped it and asked them a question regarding it, just because there was no one else there, because it did seem very interesting. It was very uneventful. But you can see the board's deliberation.
Mhm.
It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt, but it just happened recently.
So now that we have the final, articles, and thank you very much for having all the attachments on there as well. I would encourage my fellow board members to read it, especially before, and are the most recent changes italicized as well that got put in? Because it's going to the board.
That's going to, yeah, I had to.
So- No, it's
clean
fine,
it.
that's fine.
Yeah. You should be able to go back, however, to July 18 or,
Right, and take that copy.
or
and
an
send-
August.
August 24th copy.
August 24th, yeah.
So it is 7:45. Shall we try to get through, any other further discussion on Act 46? I'm sorry.
I guess, just one other thing about the proposed or the scheduled information sessions. What, is this something that we're gonna get a chance to have a look at as a town board before they happen? Is it something that we're gonna be asked to be involved with? It seems like, is it the town's presentation, the town school board's presentation?
So according to the regulations, there needs to be an informational meeting presented by the study committee in each of the towns affected within 10 days. So 10 days backed up from
Yep, no,
the 7th.
Yep.
So I believe tomorrow night on the agenda is, that's on the agenda, discussing what that presentation is
Mhm.
going to look like. At the last Act 46 meeting, people were designated to, study committee people, members were designated to attend each meeting so that there were 2 to 3 study committee members at each of the town informational meetings. What it looks like exactly, will be decided tomorrow, so I
I
don't know.
I don't know if we have the previous version posted. We had informational slides. Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I think we'd be working off of that.
I
Mhm.
would assume so as well.
And I'm sure it would be available.
Right, in advance? kind of
I
thing?
would think so, yeah.
Oh, okay,
It will be,
I don't know.
we're not the
that-
first presentation, so,
right, no,
but we won't probably meet between the first
That's-
presentation and
yeah.
the presentation here in case there's questions or.
I mean, I guess the larger question for us is the Brattleboro, is the Dummerston Town School Board do we wanna say anything as a town school board? Do we wanna express an opinion as a town school board, regardless of what the Act 46 study committee has presented
Mhm.
and will present at that meeting? And I guess at this point, I leave that as an open question. But I think it's something we should think about and talk and maybe put as an agenda item.
For the next meeting,
Sure.
and that way everybody can have a chance to review the final document
Right.
and, perhaps there will be an inkling of a presentation put together so we can just, I'll see.
I guess the final question I have is, have we ever voted on this version or on this, on whether, the Dummerston Town School Board approves of this version that it apparently has been sent to the AOE or not? I mean, I don't think that we ever really have gotten a copy with all the appendix. I mean, I know they've been available, but I don't know that we've ever had
We did that at the meeting that you missed, where we took I took the suggestions. There was a motion
To send
this-
suggestions, but not to approve.
Not to approve, I don't think.
Yeah,
Not-
it
not
wasn't
based
to approve
on
the
what I
article,
was-
right, to send
I
the
wasn't here.
suggestions.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and that was done specifically because I didn't think that without Michael here, we couldn't really vote to approve, so.
I think it would, since the final articles are just out yesterday, and I checked the SU website a lot, but I didn't check it for the articles. If maybe we put that on for an agenda item for next time, is to have a board discussion about the articles and decide if there's any action items that we wanna pursue with that.
Yeah, if we could have it as a
Okay.
possible action item as well, so
Yep,
that the general public will know. Good.
great idea, okay.
And do we think that the subcommittee might be able to provide a little more meatier
Yeah,
information for that next meeting too?
I would
Because I
think
think that would be helpful for voters if, the
Yeah.
Dummerston board is going to make some type of,
alternative. But that'd be
no,
the
not
subcommittee.
alternative, but if they're going to say something about the Articles of Agreement, I feel like we can approve it or not as a board, but, if we're not going to approve it, then we need to speak to what the subcommittee's doing
Right.
and what the possible route there might be.
I think especially after the 21st, we'll have an idea. We're kind of running in multiple directions right now.
Who's the
So-
facilitator for that? Do you know?
Cheryl. I'm getting to be too old
That's all
to,
right.
my name recollection. I can email it to you. So, anything else on Act 46? Because I think we could almost do the Code of Ethics, the board norms, and the board administration. Get that all done, perhaps.
I'm done with Act 46. Anybody else?
Excellent. So do you have that with you, Michael, by chance?
I believe that I do. Let me just make sure I have the right version of the versions. The Dummerston version, I had the Vermont version that we were presented, and then I had a comparison of the two documents. We can make copies, or people could look at them. Has everyone got a chance to look at them?
I have looked at it, but when you're
Weren't you gonna do the one that you had recommended with the changes to it? I
Yeah,
thought that was,
That's right here.
okay.
That's what she's got, and can make a copy of it real quick. Apparently is making a copy of it real quick. This one's older because it says key, I guess.
That's the 20th is the State Board of Ed meeting for the study committee, and then the 21st is the subcommittee is having, I guess, a larger meeting. Governance, so we've got facilitator here, not coming here,
No,
it's going.
Green Street. Green Street.
Yeah.
Which was good. Hopefully, put in for them to be there about a road.
What time is it?
6.
Thanks.
6.
I know there's a meeting on Tuesday, next Tuesday, is there? An alternative, there's a Democratic campaign that wants to use the Tuesday, 19th, I don't remember. I have, okay.
Bathroom break.
And we're supposed to have. First,
I love that copy machine.
to get more into something, just go to his school.
Okay.
thing. So,
I guess as a norm, I'd like to be out of here before too long, but since we're not meeting again this month, it'd be great if we could get this taken care of. And if everybody's taking a bio break, I'll make
I'm gonna take a bathroom break real quick. I'll be right back.
We had a slight recess for some photocopying, so everybody could have a copy of the documents. So,
I will say one thing, there's one change on the last bullet point, says maintain confidentiality, and I believe that at the last meeting, someone said it reads better if you say maintain confidentiality of student and employee information. And please add that in right there, in your own version.
So one version is the edited, and then one is the original.
Yeah, the one with all the,
Well, one of them We were presented with the Vermont Code of Ethics for School Board Members.
Yeah.
And as a part of our discussion at an earlier meeting, I took that version and wrote the Dummerston Town School Board Ethics Pledge to make it specific to the Dummerston Town School Board and to personalize it a little bit. And to strengthen it, in my opinion, in a few areas.
And where did you think it needed to be strengthened?
Some of the language and some of the ways that that the general Vermont School Board Ethics Pledge was written weren't really specific to Dummerston Town School Board. I mean, we can go through it line by line if you want. You have a version that compares the two.
Right, I just
So,
wondered,
in my opinion,
I just wondered where you felt it was weak.
I thought that words like recognize that a board's member responsibilities to make schools well run but not run them was kind of superficial as far as an ethics responsibility that you were signing up to pledge to. I thought some of the ways that I added some with respect to the Vermont open meeting law, talking about how the board will conduct itself in compliance with the open meeting law, and I don't think the way it was written in the original was all that strong. And I mean, I think that when we took a pledge to be on the school board in the first case, that attend all regularly scheduled board meetings, that's a part of our pledge that we signed up to when we became a board member, and when signed with Lori up at the town office that we would be doing that. So I think it's kind of superfluous to this document.
So, this is a grammatical thing, but in the second sentence, carries the multiple responsibility, wouldn't it be plural?
It may well be.
Where? Second line,
Of the,
Yep. Absolutely. Carries the multiple responsibilities.
oh,
A member carries.
hmm?
That's responsibility.
Oh, okay, I see, okay. Okay, now I see, okay. Okay.
the one under uphold the highest, that's the 4th bullet, take reasonable steps to ensure a teacher or administrator may be released from a contract prior to offering a prospective employee a position at Dummerston School.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a new one?
No, it's kind of just
that
an edit to what was there before. So as it was under the Vermont School Boards Association version, it said not agree to the hiring of a superintendent, principal, or teacher already under contract with another school.
Or maybe offering the respective employee, because they're talking about the same person on that
Mhm.
same sentence, instead of of perspective, you
Mhm.
get the perspective.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
And then promptly under the, 1, 2, 3, this, to respect my peers,
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet, promptly address any ethical concerns of fellow board members, first with the, oh, wait. Any ethical concerns of fellow board members. I guess I don't understand
with,
that.
of, or with fellow board members.
Okay. That's the, yeah, cause it should be a board discussion, not, yeah. Maintain confidentiality, student, employee. I think confidentiality means, just needs to be confidential, right? Maintain confidential student and employee information entrusted to me as a board member. Or,
Say,
That's where we put
We
the,
hit the
That's where we're putting the
maintain the
Oh.
confidentiality of student and employee.
oh,
So maybe this is an esoteric point, but I'm
Mhm.
just wondering about the open meeting law.
Mm-hmm.
Comply with Vermont's, I guess it, no, I think it's covered. But there's a way to enter into open meeting law, not that you just go, I don't know. I'm just thinking
But
about trying to
that's-
strengthen that. It's part of the open meeting law,
It's
how
part
you
of the
enter
open
it.
meeting law.
Yeah, so I think
It's-
that's covered,
So
yeah.
it's,
Yep. I just was thinking it's a nice way to highlight it, because this document may exist
well, it
beyond
says,
ourselves.
and will only enter executive session
Yeah,
as
I think it's
allowed
good, yeah.
by the open meeting law.
Yep. Okay.
so probably the conducting there, it shouldn't be ing, it should conduct board business in public.
Comply and conduct, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Any other thoughts? Shall we?
Well, we gotta change the names here at the bottom.
Yep.
And, other than that, I think it's probably ready to go. Unless anybody else has a different opinion. Maybe we could, just suggesting we could vote to adopt it with the changes. I could email the changes out, we could leave a copy, because we are,
I move we adopt it with the changes discussed.
second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? The ayes have it.
so I'll send it out to everybody on the board. If you have any, if I missed any of the changes that we talked about tonight, please just email me along so we're not conducting business.
Oh boy, so 7 after 8, we've got board norms, board administration, communications, and middle school and elementary report. We do have an executive session ahead of us, and one of the board norms is to really, 2 hours maximum is what we had talked about, so I'd like to have a quick discussion.
I would propose that we table the items 8B, C, and D until the next meeting, so we can go into executive session and then
in keeping with board norms, I think that would be the one that we've talked about. I think that would be an excellent idea. Anybody have any objection to doing that?
No.
Excellent. In which case,
So you need a motion to go into executive session?
I would entertain a motion that the board enter executive session to discuss Dummerston School's pending litigation, and school security measures under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
I move.
I second.
So we are now entering executive session. I don't,
You
will there
have
be?
to take a,
Oh,
you
sorry.
take a vote?
You do have to take a vote, I'm sorry. Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Will there be any action from?
Ready.
The Dummerston Town School Board is rising from executive session at 8:32. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
All those in favor? No, we don't need to just adjourn. Yeah.
Aye.
The board adjourns at 8:33, it looks like to me.
Yep.